Okay, well, then welcome back, everyone, to the Outring Tinnitus Podcast. This is Frida, and I am your host of the podcast where it's all about tinnitus science, and some approaches that can work for you individually in your current situation with tinnitus. I am very, very excited about bringing a very special guest to the podcast today. I think many of you will know him. He's a very, very well-known figure in the tinnitus space for many, many years. So today I'm super excited to introduce and have on the podcast Julian Cohen-Hill from the UK. So Julian, it's a big pleasure to have you here on the podcast. Maybe just introduce yourself in your own words for a little bit. And yeah, it's an honor to have you on the show today.
Well, thank you very much for inviting me. Yes, my name is Julian Cohen-Hill, and I'm based in London. I am somebody who offers craniosacral therapy, psychotherapy, and also tinnitus counseling. I have a really long story with tinnitus. I'm 57 years old now. When I was 16, that's when my tinnitus started. It's fairly likely, I was at school and I spent 2 weeks looking around for the cause of this noise. And it took me quite a long time before I realized it was coming from the inside of my head. And when I realized that, I remember feeling completely shocked. And I went to the school doctor and he said, "Don't worry about it, it'll just go." One of the most positive messages I had from health business. It didn't go. And about 16 years later, when I was in my mid-30s, it was really getting bad. So I'd had a constant noise throughout my 20s, and it got worse and worse. And then I was doing this job as a wine guide. I used to take people on wine holidays all over Europe and going to restaurants and sampling the finest Burgundies. It was a really interesting job. But my tinnitus got really, really bad. And eventually I couldn't hear the phone ring. And I kept on missing messages, really important messages on the answer phone. And I eventually lost a job because I couldn't function. It was too much. I couldn't sleep or function. And I went and I gave up my flat, went to live with my mother for a few months and waited to see an ENT and the usual thing. After waiting 6 months, I think, he said, "Oh, you're quite deaf, so you need hearing aids. So good luck." And I said, "Well, what about my tinnitus? I've come here to talk to you about tinnitus." "Oh, you can't do anything about that. Just learn to live with it. There's nothing that can help." And I felt like I'd been pushed off a cliff, and I went into a really bad depression, and my tinnitus went 10 out of 10. It was just awful. Luckily, a friend of my mother's came to visit, and she said, "Gosh, I'm really sorry. It sounds like you're very stressed out. Why don't you try craniosacral therapy?" Never heard of that. So I went along and had a session, and the guy was working on my head, and I can remember it was like a transistor radio. My tinnitus started changing sound, and I went, "How are you doing that? What are you doing? How can you do that?" And I remember my body on the couch just started going, and I felt these areas of tension releasing, and it was like my whole body just sunk into the couch, and my tinnitus started changing. And at the end of the session, I felt incredibly relaxed.
Wow.
In fact, I was so relaxed. I had to drive really slowly, and I had to keep on stopping because I shouldn't have driven that. So I was just so relaxed. And I started laughing and crying. I was laughing and laughing and crying. And it was like a huge amount of tension just being opened up and
wow.
And for the next few days, I felt very emotional. And my tinnitus sounded a bit quieter. And I couldn't believe it. It was actually really shocking for me. So I went back and had a few more sessions, and it really felt like after 20 years, something was changing my tinnitus, and it was starting to ease off a bit. So I decided to train as a craniosacral therapist. I'd lost my job. Working with food and wine was not good for tinnitus.
Right.
And I signed up. I did a taster weekend that loved it, and then I enrolled as a student. And we all learn how to be professional craniosacral therapists by practicing hands-on stuff. And we were using each other as guinea pigs, learning and working on each other. And over the course of a year, my tinnitus came down until the following summer when I had my first silence. And I remember waking up in the morning thinking, oh my God. And it was a summer morning. I was at my mother's house, and I just got up and I ran to the bottom of the garden. And I remember there was a wood pigeon, just doing its normal.
Yeah.
Then it stopped, and there was nothing. And
Wow.
I thought, oh my God, I knew it. I just deep down, I had a sense. I knew I could get better. I didn't believe what the ENT had said at the beginning. I did. It really shocked me. But when I had my first silence, I thought, right, yes, I can get better. If I can get better, then other people can.
Yeah.
And so I vowed to myself that I'd do my best to help people with tinnitus. And I set up a practice. I was still training. And from day one, I've just been really busy working with tinnitus people. And I've been doing cranial work now for 23 years.
Wow.
I also trained as a psychotherapist. And that's been amazing work. It's really, really rewarding work. And I've learned quite a lot about tinnitus. And I used to get really fed up with all the negativity out there on the internet. So I thought, if I can get better, when I learn things, why don't I just put it on YouTube?
Right.
So I just shared my stuff on YouTube.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a really good point. I'm going to make a 3-minute video, and I just put it out and and then now there's something like 205 videos on YouTube. And I get emails from all over the world from people saying, hey, I found your videos and they really helped. I was really in a dark place, and thanks to you, I'm better.
Awesome.
And
just to get in there, like to the listeners and to the people who have not seen your YouTube channel yet, you are one of the most popular YouTube channel in the space of tinnitus. Like for how many years now? When did you start?
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. 2010, I think. I can't remember when I started the YouTube.
13 years then.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
But the trouble with YouTube, I think YouTube's amazing, but you get negative information, and you can watch a video and suddenly you can get flicked into a really dark and negative video. Yeah. And you get lots of trolls, people who are very, very destructive and aggressive and nasty.
Yeah.
And they write their nasty stuff.
Right.
And it really upsets people. And so as a therapist, my job is to help people feel safe, help people understand, and help people to
My approach also is when people ask me when people ask me like, how do you deal with these like negative online communities, etc., then I say, think about it this way, right? We humans are geared for survival, and when all of the other humans run one way because there's a lion approaching, surely you're running with them. Right. So when you see a negative comment and someone says he's just having the hardest time because of tinnitus, he might have 10 other things going on in life that make him feel the way he feels. And I mean, yes, tinnitus might be a big player in the game, but, often people just post these comments in order to open up a valve for some stress release, right? They don't think about what that does to other people, and maybe don't think about maybe deleting the comment because 3 months later they feel completely different. Right. And that triggers so many other people. And that release of negativity is just the overwhelming amount of people on the internet. When you Google, when you go into tinnitus, it's just all negative. So like I have a relatively tiny YouTube channel compared to yours. But we are fighting basically like these big negative, huge negative outlets. And when you see that, for example, now when you use ChatGPT in relation to tinnitus, there's a negative bias, right? The AI has a negative bias towards tinnitus because that's how the internet is seeing tinnitus.
It's really, it's such a shame. So because of that, I created an app called Quieten.
Nice.
So I deliberately created it to create a safe haven to protect people from negativity. You think about the marketplace for hundreds and thousands of years. You have a market and you sell your apples.
Yeah.
And if someone comes along and says, "I don't like your apples,"
Yeah.
they move on. Or if they let go of some nasty stuff and leave a mess in front of your market stall,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, you pack away, the rain comes along and washes it away. But on the internet, the negativity stays there and festers, and it causes no end of suffering. And if you have very vulnerable, fearful people, and then they come across negative information, that can really make a huge difference. So my app, Quieten, it kind of looks like this. When you open it up, you have a question and answer session. You have lots of different talks, yoga, etc. I put information on my healing retreat in Sardinia coming up. We can talk about. There's a matrix here, so people who are stuck, oh my God, I can't get this. You click on that level, and then you get talks for that level, learning tinnitus, and then very important, you get techniques. So, one of the techniques, the evening face massage, the practical things where if you're yawning and you're massaging your face and going behind your ears and neck, when you yawn, it's a natural way of de-stressing your ear, nose, and throat system. The tubes pop open and the little auditory muscles have a release. You can hear the sound. Practically doing these very, very simple but powerful de-stressing practices are really, really helpful. So basically, I've collected, after 23 years of working with tinnitus people, all the stuff that's helped them. I've collected it together and put it on the app.
Wow.
So lots of information on what tinnitus is, what makes it better, what makes it worse, and lots of practical techniques, physical practices that you can do, ways of focusing, ways of de-stressing the upper body in a way that really helps tinnitus get better. And it's safe. There's no sort of person vomiting their negativity and the stress.
Yeah, we do have a designated space for that, but we have a trigger warning in that space. In our community, it's called the tinnitus venting zone. So people are allowed to go in there and to vent. But I always want the people to take 30 seconds to 2 minutes before they vent in order to write it down before posting it. So while they vent, they start getting a question out there for other members inside the community to say, okay, I'm venting, release of negative energy, but I don't say this is the worst day I've ever had, I'm going to kill myself. I'm going to say, what are the emotions that I experience? Why am I experiencing them? And then maybe I can get feedback from other people, how they have behaved in response to these emotions. And then it can turn into a very powerful tool for the whole community, right? If you don't want to go in there, there's our trigger warning where we say, if you don't feel like you're having your best days right now, maybe don't go into the venting space. But when you feel like you need a vent and you want feedback from others and we want to keep it creative, then you can go in there. But it's like at least we're creating a space with rules for that release, for that, as you called it, like vomiting out of negative energy, because we turn it into something quite beautiful. We turn it into a tool of getting feedback from other people who experience something similar, the same, or who've even been able to overcome it. So in a way, I super agree, because and also for all the people, is it available on iOS and Android, the Quieten app? Fantastic. I mean,
And
that's fantastic. Yeah.
the question and answer sessions, I hold them once every 2 weeks.
Nice.
It it's great because you see people coming along and they're stressed out, but they hear other people getting better,
Yeah.
and people make suggestions to each other. Oh, I tried this, or this really, really helped. And it's lovely seeing people getting better. And it's very therapeutic because it's all about helping and supporting. When people are in a dark place, it's very good for them to have therapy and have somebody they can vent
Yeah.
with.
Yeah.
And so I'm really used to people coming along and telling me everything, and
Yeah.
I've been on the
Yeah.
journey myself, so I can
Yeah.
really
Yeah. Yeah.
relate to
Relate to
that.
it.
And in a group situation, we just need to make sure we're all going in the right direction. So I think what you've set up there is full of awareness. There's safety in it, and that sounds great.
Yeah. I wonder, and we've talked a little bit about this in before, so I just want to ask that question. I hope that you don't mind. For me, I felt like after 4 years of doing this, I really enjoy it, and it's sort of, I think life has thrown single-sided deafness and tinnitus and the hearing aids towards me for a reason. So it's been a big struggle in my life, but it's also given me a lot of purpose and allowed me to do this and connect with people, amazing people such as yourself. So I'm really, really grateful for that, right? That I'm not sitting in an office reviewing tax forms or something like that, because I don't think I am someone like that. But it does get, and maybe like just from someone who's only been doing it for half a decade and not for 3 decades, how do you deal with these settings and with people of taking people's negative emotions and protecting yourself from it? Because I think as a trained psychotherapist, that's someone that you learn in training as well. And for me, it's like something that I have to learn by doing it because I'm a coach. Yeah. What is your opinion?
I love doing it. I find it tremendously rewarding helping people.
Yeah.
Every day I get emails from people saying, "You saved my life. Thank you so much. I was going to give up my jazz
Great.
profession, and I found your information and I took your advice, and now I'm much better. Or now
Great.
I've come back to quiet." So that's tremendously rewarding. And with cranial work, you become aware of a person's mind, body, and energetic system.
Mm.
And it's incredibly beautiful when you feel somebody's system just dropping into stillness. Oh,
Mm.
and all the mind stops, all the jumpy electric jelly goes calm and smooth, and all the floaty swirliness settles,
Yeah.
and the whole room feels really peaceful. And very often, when somebody drops into stillness, you can feel the body going incredibly calm. Then very often they say, "Gosh, my tinnitus has gone quiet." And I love that. That's what's happened to me. And that's what I really love experiencing with clients that I work with. I know I have got better. I had tinnitus for 20 years, and I've had like over 20 years without tinnitus now. I have most of my life as zero. I hear nothing in a quiet room, and I had it incredibly badly. So I know I've got better, and I've helped hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people get better. I know it's possible to get better. So if somebody comes into my clinic in great distress, saying, "I'm never going to get better, I've been told I cannot," and their feet completely frozen, overwhelmed, and trapped, "Help, get me out of here, I can't escape." My knowing that it is possible to get better really helps me
Right.
stay very calm and clear. I know people can get better,
Right.
and I can't really pretend otherwise. So
Right.
I can very, very blocked mindset saying, "Oh, what you're saying is rubbish, you can't get better." And I said, "Well, you're entitled to your opinion. I really respect your opinion.
Right.
Maybe it's possible for things to shift. Have you considered
Yeah.
this? Maybe try
Yeah.
that."
Yeah.
And then people start opening up and things start
Right.
shifting and changing. So I'm lucky that I have quite a strong fulcrum of knowing. I have helped very stuck people get better. And the healing work, In scientific circles, healing's almost a dirty word. But when you feel somebody's nervous system and energetic system go very calm, peaceful, that's it. That's what I want.
Yeah.
That's a relief for me and for them,
Right.
and that's what matters.
Right. So I wanted to ask you, I mean, that's of course amazing. And I think that it's amazing that you have been able to help so many hundreds and hundreds of people all over the world with your program and with your work as a psychologist and craniosacral therapist. How much would you say does it depend on the various forms of tinnitus? To what extent? I mean, look, consider my case, right? I am a hearing loss-based tinnitus sufferer. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's just the way it is. I sure I have some problems with my neck and back and grinding my teeth. And I have exactly what you described, this wobbly energy all the time. Yeah. I'm bubbly, I'm creative, I'm all over the place all the time. I surely would need some craniosacral therapy just to get my system to drop. I started doing acceptance and commitment therapy in my coaching program and also courses on my community, etc. As I had insomnia for a few years, not because of tinnitus, but because just life. And that was the one thing that helped me. So I went into a sleep clinic, and even like the most renowned sleep scientist here in Germany, he's like, well, you know what? In the end, we'll get you an off-label antidepressant. And I said, well, I'm not depressed. I can't sleep. Like, it's not that I'm like depressed. I just have trouble sleeping. And then I got I got a book recommendation. It's called The Sleep Book by Dr. Guy Meadows. And he uses acceptance and commitment therapy. He's also a doctor in London. He has a sleep clinic there, very successful sleep clinic, and they use acceptance and commitment therapy. And then that was the one thing that literally helped me from getting very few hours of not great sleep and always being a zombie to like starting to sleep normal and natural again. And I was so amazed by that I thought like, okay, often, or not for everyone, but for some people, it's not so much the things itself, but rather the relationships with the things that turn into an emotional reactive state that govern the outcome, right? In my case, the outcome is sleeplessness, because my relationship with my bed when I start brushing my teeth at night is like, oh my gosh, now I'm going to go to bed. Will I be able to sleep? And in that state, surely I won't be able to sleep. And the same thing with tinnitus. When I know my tinnitus has been producing all these negative emotions, all that outburst of stress hormones inside my body, making me feel so bad and drained and energyless. When I have that same reaction to my tinnitus, then of course, that is the problem that I won't be able to fix. So in essence, my question is, and sorry for that long phrasing of the question, but I want to lead people, segue them into the question of you combine both approaches, physical and mental, sort of like saying physical being the craniosacral therapy and more like the physical body approach, and psychological being more your work as a psychotherapist. And if you were to say, if a patient comes in, is it mostly that they have in need of both of these approaches, or sometimes just a singular approach? And I mean, do you think that you're special in a way that you were able to help your tinnitus quieten it completely, and other people might not be able to? Or
yes. So I think mentally understanding what it is and how it works is really helpful. So putting out a lot of information, it helps people see tinnitus, instead of seeing it as a monster, they can start to see it as a healthometer. It's feedback in their nervous system showing that they're too up and out and they're too alerted. The hearing sensitivity is too high. And so they end up hearing the buzz of the brain. And knowing that taking the attention away from that, shifting your focus, calming, completely changes this pattern. That's really, really helpful. So you don't feel trapped. You start to think, oh gosh, yes, this is a changeable feast. Our hearing's very changeable all day long. It becomes sensitive and it switches off, it alerts, it switches off. This is normal physiology, hugely, horribly overlooked by the ENT community. This is so fundamental to tinnitus that people are in that up and alert state, so tuned in that they're hearing the buzz of the brain. So psychologically, it's very helpful to understand that Hearing's changeable. We can change our focus, and we can settle our nervous system. The body stuff calms the nervous system down. So if you have very fired up, very creative, very alert people, it's really great to have cranial work. I think all good body work is fantastic. I love cranial work because it's very deep and it's very gentle, it's very safe, and it helped me more than anything. So if you get help to really drop into stillness and switch off, you feel incredibly safe. So all that hyper alertness, the radar ears can switch off. It's hugely helpful. So I think both are really, really important. So people who have body work, I recommend everybody to find a good hands-on therapist to switch them off. Do try cranial work, cranial sacral therapy. It's fantastic.
I will.
And then learning yoga, tai chi, massaging, breathing practices. There's so many things we can do to take our mind off the ringing and to settle and calm the whole nervous system. These things help people get better.
Yeah. I am an absolute big fan of all of these combination of approaches. I set out to do a quick yoga session every day. Sometimes I comply, sometimes I don't, but I do see that in the days that I start my day with a 15-20 minute yoga practice and then like just 10 to 15 minutes of meditation afterwards. However it is, right? If it's a really meditation where you're all over the place, or whether it's a meditation where you really learn to settle down, it just gives you a check-in of where you are, where you're at that day, and then you can start and kick off your day a little bit more mindfully. Sometimes I manage well. Sometimes you know it as well with having a business, an online business. Sometimes you manage, sometimes it's just you're all over the place. So yeah, I mean, I guess that comes with the fact of having a business. But I wanted to ask you, how would it look like if you work with a one-on-one person? How would that look like? How would you go through it? If they come into your clinic and you say like they're very distressed and they say, "Oh, I will never get better," what would sort of be the trajectory if you work with that person?
I take the case history, so I understand how it was triggered, what was going on in their lives beforehand, and try to piece together the puzzle that's unique to them and suggest that because of this, that's happened. Then I make recommendations of practices, approaches, body work, some dietary things. I just give them a bit of useful, practical information. And then I give them homework to do. So techniques and practices. The cranial work, the hands-on work, that's really important because I can track their nervous system. I can start to build up a picture of what's going on inside their skin bag, and you can see how that progresses over time. So I always write 7 to 4 out of 10. So they come in and they're buzzing, really charged up with 7, and by the time they leave, maybe they've dropped down to a lovely smooth 3. Or maybe drop down into stillness. They might get down to 1 or 2, which is really calm. So that's the face-to-face work. And then I have clients all over the world, and we meet online, and I take their case history and I talk to them about it. We do focusing techniques when we get into the deeper work. So I teach them how to find their center. On my app, for example, I'd recommend this for anybody. On the app, when you go into the matrix, on level 4 techniques, the first technique is called the boat mast meditation. And this technique, you basically, you focus in on your spine, you feel your physical spine, and then you move backwards and forwards like a boat on the water, the mast of a boat, just calmly moving backwards and forwards or from side to side. And you learn to anchor your midline down into the ground.
Actually feels very nice.
Most people get it. I've been amazed by how everybody said, "Oh, I tried that. Yeah, I could get it." And when you anchor and you become aware of your midline, automatically you're taking the intense focus away from your head and your ears.
Mm.
By focusing on your center, this is very safe. And by anchoring, the nervous system tends to like, feeling its foundations and feeling settled in. That's very calming for the nervous system. So, these practices and approaches can really help. And for somebody like you who's had hearing loss, deafness, and hard of hearing, your auditory system may be trying to hear. So it's ramping up the internal sensitivity, which is really part central to tinnitus.
Yeah.
When you can stop doing that, instead of going around with radar ears trying to pick up any last piece of sound, when you can just switch off and let your hearing settle and let your system focus, then even with really major hearing loss, your tinnitus can still get better.
Mm.
There's a myth in the medical community that if you have damaged hair cells, that gives you tinnitus for life. It's just not true. If you lose hearing, I deal with loads of people who suddenly lose hearing. If you lose your hearing, it's common to get tinnitus. The brain puts tinnitus in like an overcompensation.
Yeah.
But that can then stop and go away. And one of the key ways of that happening is, instead of listening out like a radar, really learning to switch off and stop fighting it, and to just accept and be, and hopefully drop into a much calmer, more settled nervous system, then that hypervigilance really switches off. And hearing can work with the physical sounds it's detecting, and it can switch off. Happy ears can switch off. They go into screen save mode. When you fall asleep in front of the television at night, you've got screaming, gunshots, ambulances coming out of the TV, and you can just that's a perfect example. Tons of noise coming in, and your brain, your nervous system goes, no, it doesn't matter.
It's not important now.
Switch off. Because you're safe, because it doesn't matter.
Your
audio system doesn't hear it. It really does switch off. So people you can get better.
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%. I 100% believe that. And I think the other day or a couple of weeks ago, I read an article that surely there is a deeper level of subconscious awareness. And it has to be there, because if you manage to fall asleep to the sound of gunshots coming from the TV, and some deeper level knows that those sounds are coming from the TV, so it's not important that we pay attention to them, is the one thing. But when you start hearing your baby miss a breath or something like that, you wake up immediately, right? So there must be a deeper level of subconscious awareness screening for what to pay attention to and what not. Right?
Absolutely. And it's all about your relationship with the noise. So if you like the sound of the wind in the trees, it's very relaxing, you can fall asleep. But if you've had a horrible experience of hypersensitive hearing, the fridge or the light bulb,
or the neighbors.
The neighbors, oh my God. When you start going, oh, I hate that noise, and you react to it, the first thing that happens is that your sound sensitivity goes up, and your brain goes and fetches it even more. And that's horrible. I've worked with people who have been terrified of the sound of a bird, but they can sing in an opera. It's so revealing, because the music is beautiful, and because we love music. Or if we're talking to friends and we're catching up over a lovely dinner, we can talk with 3 or 4 people with no problems. But then we get home and, oh my God, is that fridge going to drive me crazy? And then the mind goes and fetches the fridge noise, and we react enormously.
Yeah, I have a good anecdote there. I won't mention any names, of course, but I had a client once from the UK as well, and she was she had such a degree of hyperacusis that she would not be able to work on her laptop because her laptop fan would be too loud for her to tolerate. And I was like, a laptop fan is something that if I take my hearing aid out, I can't hear that anymore. It's impossible for me to hear that. But when she would go out to the pub, have 2 glasses of white wine, she wouldn't mind 95 decibel of conversation in the background.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, how is that even possible? I mean, it must be the psychological connection to the laptop or the work that you're doing on that laptop.
Entirely.
Right? Versus, yeah.
It's about the relationship. I mean, in my book, I wrote a book, Tinnitus from Tyrant to Friends.
Yeah.
When you understand tinnitus, let it be, stop fighting it, and start really shifting and settling, you can see that tinnitus is actually a healthy feedback loop. It comes up, it's giving you information. Your ears are going, whoa, wait a minute. You start to see tinnitus as like a healthometer.
Yeah.
You look at the things that make it worse, you look at the things that make it better. You try and change your lifestyle to accommodate the things that make it better. You start to see that tinnitus is actually a useful healthometer, telling you quite a lot about your own feelings, how you react, what makes you feel safe. And it's actually, dare I say it, a fantastic symptom, because when you work with it, it's possible to make a really good recovery. And it teaches you a lot about your own personality and what makes you afraid, what makes you feel safe. And it's very changeable. It can come right down. So, that book, I'll just grab it.
Please.
Tinnitus from Tyrant to Friend. Inside this book, there's a matrix. When at the bottom, when you're stuck with it, help, it's like a tyrant. I can't get out of here. Once you come up across this line, you have a really good sense of what makes me better, and you just do more of the things to help your tinnitus get better, and it becomes like a friendly feedback loop. And once it comes down to a really low level, so when we're down to 0.5 out of 10, or maybe a 1, you've gone from that horrible high tinnitus, it's come right down to very boring, not quite sure if I've got it or not, tinnitus. Then doing yawning, face massages, stretching. Shifting your focus into your midline. These things can be enough to just switch it off. You don't go into this, you just do something useful and then move on, and you don't fixate on it.
Yeah, for me, it's mostly, I don't think my tinnitus is, or I mean, I'm happy to have your opinion on that, but my tinnitus for me is not bothersome. So I go outside, and if I concentrate on it, I can clearly hear it, right? But my hearing aid allows me to hear all the other things. So I don't have a negative relationship for me. For me, it's like I also sit down, I do a meditation, I get into relatively deep states of meditation. I love doing yoga nidra, and I can switch off. So it's not that tinnitus is not allowing me to do that, but it is there. But for me, much more, and this is, I think, what I need to work on personally much more, is that with this only one ear, the other ear has to do all the hearing work. And then, of course, it needs to this ear needs to act like one of these big antenna receivers to basically get everything in, because we need to measure our environment for dangers and so on and so forth. So I think those are the things that, for me, make me maybe in a normal day's work more tired, because I have to pay extra attention because I don't have those 2 functioning ears. And I have to also see that I have a lot higher rate of my brain working in deciphering things, etc. And probably one of the reasons why I have more difficulty switching off at night as well.
Yeah, so a couple of responses to you. if you can do that boat mask meditation and get used to feeling your center and sensing stillness in the room, so you're not listening for silence, you're experiencing the calm, still atmosphere through your body, if you like. That's very safe. If you, I don't know if you've learned lip reading, gone to a lip reading class, but if I'm profoundly deaf in this ear and moderately deaf in this ear, and if you learn a lip reading class, it's great fun. It's incredibly easy to learn. And then when you're talking to people, even at a dinner party with lots of noise, you can follow the conversation. You have to look and watch the mouth.
Yeah, sure.
But you really stay connected, and you're probably lip reading already, but
I do.
If you do a class, you will become excellent at lip reading.
Oh, wow.
It really, really helps massively. That's such good fun. And your radar ears,
turning down a little.
You know, the principal function of hearing is to keep you safe. So if you're walking down the street and somebody comes racing along on a bicycle, hopefully you'll be able to hear them enough. But if you can get your system to really know deep peace and calm, then the hypervigilance of your auditory system can reset itself back to a normal focus. Please remember that focused ears, calm, focused ears are much clearer. They can hear a violin in an orchestra. If you're in fight or flight ears, you just hear noise. The more focused we are, the more our hearing becomes focused. So actually being calm and focused makes our hearing function much, much better. And for you and me, we need to make the most of the hearing we have. And I do think those two things make a big difference: being calm and focused, allowing your ears not to be radars, and lip reading. It's a very helpful other skill.
Thank you for that suggestion. How long would I be doing how long and how often would I do these practice? I mean, lip reading, I can do a class, but for example, the boat mask, would you recommend to do it like 3 times a day, 5 minutes, or what?
I'd recommend doing it. I mean, it's good to do it together once, because then if we do it together once, then you pick up on the transference of it. You can feel the joint experience of it. Even if you're in Germany and I'm in London, it still happens. Once you've got it, then it's incredibly easy to do. And the trick is to remember to do it. So when you sit down in front of your workplace, your computer, it's good just to take a few moments to get your bearings. I trained as a psychotherapist in a Buddhist psychotherapy college, the Karuna Institute, a fantastic training, and one of the main resources we needed as a psychotherapist to make sure that we're fine first, to settle and sit with our midline first before we open to the other person. And so this practice is very much along their lines of working. It's just one of the most useful things I've ever learned in my life. And yes, if you can just do it little and often, it's incredibly helpful. I'd watch the video and do it properly a couple of times. So I talk you through it. And then once you've got it, and you just deepen into it. You can really feel a very powerful connection through your midline down into the ground. And it feels like an oak tree sometimes. You feel very rooted. And it makes you feel strong and clear. So all your senses, they can just switch off and feel safe again. This is all about safety as far as I'm concerned. Feeling safe, so you can switch off.
Because of course, like if you look at it, people with incredible amounts of tinnitus distress, what they feel and where that is coming from, the arousal in the body, is feelings of being unsafe with the state your body is in, right? So people will say, like, on Facebook, you say, like, no, it's not that I feel stressed. I'm not anxious. I'm not angry. I'm not sad. I just don't like my tinnitus. And I'm like, well, and how does that make you feel? What happens with your body, right? Like, so people think it's solely and simply that sound that they dislike, that they experience, and if they could only get rid of that sound. But what they need to experience and realize first, it's that reaction to that sound that puts them in a sort of fight or flight state constantly, which drains all their energy then, which then of course makes it incredibly difficult to get out of the vicious cycle because you constantly hear it.
Exactly. I went to the Tinnitus Research Initiative, which is a conference on tinnitus science and research in Dublin this summer. And
nice.
It was great to see all the scientific papers being presented and seeing which parts of the central nervous system are responsible for tinnitus. And some of the messages, one thing that's very clear, there's several different parts of the central nervous system, in the limbic system, the amygdala, nucleus accumbens, all various different places. And if you look at what they do in the central nervous system, it all starts to make sense. But there's a very complicated network of places that are interacting with each other. And it's all about safety, knowing where you are. What is the sound? Is it dangerous? Is it friendly? Where is it? It all starts to, even in the scientific research world, if you look at the bits that it's saying, you look at the story it's telling, it's all telling the same story. It's all about feeling safe. It's all about being able to be focused and calm. And I find it very exciting. It's great to be able to pool all the information together and get quite a clear picture of this symptom.
And Julian, how amazing must it feel for you to see that you've been doing this for decades now? And I mean, a little bit, the sad part about it is that there are hundreds of thousands of ENTs out there all over the world who literally daily send probably hundreds of thousands of people back home to say, like, there's nothing we can do, just don't be so stressed out about it. And there's literally a handful of people who have understood this concept from very early on of how important it is to get the person a feeling of being able to be safe while experiencing tinnitus as the very first step in the door of getting better with that tinnitus, right?
Yeah, it is absolutely essential. Feeling safe, calming, settling, understanding, having a good, clear understanding of how it works. It makes a huge difference. And at the conference, I met some wonderful ENTs who had a brilliant understanding of tinnitus. I wish I could put my app into the National Health Service. It'd be great. I have learned quite a lot about tinnitus from 40 years of my own life story now. But the medical model needs double-blind, placebo,
randomized, whatnot,
randomized research, which I completely get. That's the way the medical model is. People getting better is what, as a therapist, that's what matters to me. I want people to get better.
Of course.
I did have somebody recently say, well, if there's no scientific evidence for it, it's worthless. And I said, no,
of course not.
Scientism. That's an elitist way of thinking, which there's nothing more important than people getting better. That's the most important thing.
It's and that's unfortunate. Maybe that's I mean, that's my personal opinion. Let's not get into politics, but maybe that's one positive thing about you guys having left the EU, that now you don't have to do the medical certification process of A1 and A2 anymore. But imagine that it's still very, very, very difficult to certify an app as a medical product and to prove that it helps and benefits people. But
no, Britain's very good for that, actually. we are allowed as practitioners, as long as we're qualified and we're insured and we're supervised, we're allowed to work.
Right.
And we're not paid by insurance companies. You know, our business works because we help people. We're not subsidized. So, you know, so if your work works, then work goes well.
Yeah.
So
as simple as that. Yeah.
But it's, you know, the grassroots, people finding out about the work. That's why YouTube's been really helpful, because a lot of people find the videos and then start learning, and they start realizing that they can get better. And, you know, they start knowing more about tinnitus than ENT people do. You know, I'm completely behind the ENTs. I really just wish that we could all learn from each other. They do amazing work. They're all brilliant, highly intelligent people. I get cross when they say there's nothing you can do about tinnitus.
That's true.
You know, that's not
Same
true.
Here. Yeah. I 100% agree, Julian. That's something that I deal a lot with, a lot of people, and people say, I mean, I've only been doing this for a fraction of the time that you've been doing this, but I get people, they say to me, like, this is the first time they've ever felt they could connect with someone who understands. And that alone, as very first thing, starts to settle them a little bit. And then the continued practice. I mean, I've been doing it for nearly 5 years now as well, and I've found my way of doing things. Now I do work a little bit more with the vicious cycle of feelings, emotions, action and reaction towards your tinnitus, using tools of CBT and acceptance as a commitment. But of course, also for some people, I know that the right kind of stretches are important. For example, the one guy, he does a lot of cycling. So I'm asking him, like, do you stretch your hip flexors? Right? I'm like, he goes to physiotherapy, and I'm like, no, she works on my back mainly. I'm like, well, if you're doing a lot of cycling, mostly probably the butt muscles and the hip flexors are the ones that you definitely need to stretch when you also sit in your music school the rest of the day. So you should be stretching those guys as well, because otherwise you're going to get tension in your neck, and that's going to cause headaches. It's going to make your tinnitus go up. So it is all connected, but it's not the primary thing, part of things that I focus on. But I do also get very sad when people come to me and say, for example, let's say an ENT in the US, they spend $300 on a 10-minute consultation. And the guy said to him, like, well, why do you even book the consultation? You know, there's nothing I can do. And it's that's outrageous, right?
Yeah, well, they should say, I don't know how to help you before you spend the money.
Yeah.
But the trouble is that the people in the position of power and authority, they come out with statements like, repeat after me, you've got tinnitus, you're going to have tinnitus. You're going to have tinnitus for the rest of your life. One ENT I heard said that to the client, and they said that's like casting a spell on you.
Yeah,
that is
for sure.
Nonsense, you know. So it's fortunately with the internet, there are lots of. It is possible to get in touch with helpful information from people who have got better themselves. The difficulty is that there's just so much information, and people don't know where to turn.
No
and
system, no proper system.
Really overwhelmed. And, you know, I obviously attract people who are interested in body work, and they like the whole notion of dropping into stillness. And, you know,
I like that a lot.
You know, experiencing that, people who are interested in that, then they come through the door. And if somebody says, look, I think your work is nonsense and hocus pocus, which, you know, it happens from time to time. Unfortunately, on Wikipedia, what they write about cranial sacral therapy is it's like a witch hunt. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah.
But those people, they go and fight. They're waiting for their pill with scientists in their white coats saying, off we go. Good luck. I hope they find it. But I just like working with the people who come through the door, and I put my information out there, and that kind of attracts the right kind of people. We all need to find what works for us.
Yeah. I think this, like, doomed, this almost like not death sentence, but this thing that when people are stuck in this fight or flight and in this incredibly reactive mode where they feel so drained and so bad, and when you then go to them and tell them you're going to have this for the rest of your life, then surely, you know, like even if you do experience tinnitus for the next 10, 20 years at a low level, doesn't mean that you are stuck in that way in your body, in the way you're feeling together with it. Right. Yeah. So that's the big problem. The people associate their state of being and say, well, if this is how I'm going to be feeling the next 10 years, then might as well, you know. So I think that's one of the biggest problems, to say like, well, you know, when are emotions ever forever? Yeah. And even in difficult states or times, they might have experienced depression or the loss of a loved one or something. And I mean, these things are part of life, but these are states that never last forever. And I think that's what people missing out a lot on when the doctor says you're going to be feeling like this. He didn't say that, but people interpret it that way. Because when they hear you're going to have this for the rest of your life, they hear I'm going to be feeling like this for the rest of my life. And that's not a nice thing to hear.
Yeah, it's not true. As you rightly say, our experience is constantly shifting. And sometimes we can be obsessed with tinnitus, sometimes we forget all about it. But, you know, one of the lucky things is with the internet stuff and YouTube, it's produced a lot of data. A lot of people are saying, this is what I've experienced. And so in my app, there's a section called Positive Stories. And it talks by people who've got better. Nice. And there's one document here called Positive Feedback. And if you click on that, I just collect, every once in a while, I collect things that people have written on the internet. I'm not allowed to use my clients because of confidentiality, but when people post things in the public space, then, and I ask them, I take what they've written, and there must be about, I don't know, 140 stories here, people getting better, you know.
Fantastic.
When you hear about people getting better, then you know it's a possibility. And then when somebody said, no, you're going to have this for the rest of your life, you can either think, well, what they're saying is negative, and they may not know, but clearly they don't know how to help me. Or they're sort of bullying me because they're in a stuck place and they can't believe that they can open up and release and let go as well. Positive stories are just so beneficial.
Yeah, 100%. I 100% agree. Julian, I wanted to ask you, I mean, obviously it's been so fun, and I'm 100% sure that we should have another episode together, because I think
very happy to.
There are probably like tens of hours of we could still be continuing to talk about everything here. And I would love for you, if that at some point in the next few months is possible, to give a little bit of a talk maybe in our community, if you would want to, and maybe also present your app and maybe present a few things. I mean, we can see whether we can schedule that. And I wanted to ask you one thing again. Please share quickly. The app is called Quieten, right? So yeah. Quieten, right?
Yeah, I don't know if you can see it. So quiet, Quiet, and then N on the end, quieten.
Yeah.
The verb to quieten down.
Yeah.
So you can find that in the App Store or Google Play.
Great.
And my book, Tinnitus from Tyrant to Friend, is on Amazon. It's been translated into many languages, German, Turkish, Arabic.
Wow.
Lots of different languages. You can find that on my website or on Amazon. My website's juliancowanhill.co.uk.
Yeah, we will definitely put that in the show notes so you can, so that people can check it out. For the people who are listening to this episode, and I also sincerely suggested people to go check all your resources out. I wanted to ask you one last thing now. I wanted to know for people who are hearing this and listening to this, who are relatively new to tinnitus? What can we say? How can we tune into the compassion of welcoming them onto this journey? And what are some of the first steps that they could start? And I think that's like a nice thing that I like to ask the people who come onto my podcast.
Yeah, well, just first of all, don't panic. Tinnitus is very changeable. Just like your pupils dilate and I feel in a dangerous situation, you need to see any movement anywhere, your ears become sensitive, and this is very, very changeable. So the most important thing to learn is how to shift your focus away. You want to leave your ears alone and to get a really good, solid sense of well-being and inside your nervous system.
Yeah.
So, all these practices of body work, meditation, mindfulness really, really help massively.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very nice. And one last question. Maybe you have an answer, maybe you don't have an answer. It's a much more general question. So I'm going to be introducing the question for a bit so you can think about it. It's a question that's often asked on one of my favorite podcasts. One of my favorite podcasts is the Tim Ferriss Show. And the question goes like this. If you had a chance of putting up a billboard with one sentence, let's say in the middle of Times Square or in London, in the middle of the city with one sentence, what would that sentence maybe be? Maybe you have an idea already. Maybe you need a couple of seconds to find out about this. This is, I think, a very general question, and everyone comes up with different answers. But I find it quite fun and quite insightful of what people would, what their message to the world would be if they had a chance to put something like that out.
My message is there really is stillness.
Nice.
We can experience stillness. We're all sitting in a big soup of stillness, and this stillness goes right through us, and it's very, very nourishing and resourcing. It's a real thing that we can get to experience and know.
Wow. Yeah, I think we keep forgetting too much about that, right? With modern social media, information available now with the AI at the tip of everything immediately. And we forget to just do nothing.
Well, I have a little story. I put into Chat GPT what are the top 15 tips to help tinnitus, and it came out almost exactly the same with my top 15 tips.
Wow, really?
Yes.
Well, that also shows that you are the one who's longest on the internet of what you've been doing, and the AI just copies that basically. But that's at least good, because that means people with tinnitus already find the right tips of approaching it.
Yeah, wow. I mean, it is an amazing thing that's happening. Scary, but amazing.
Yeah. All right, Julian, it's been fantastic. It's been a very, very big pleasure from my side. So thank you so much for your time and coming onto the podcast. I'm sure we'll have you back on the show. From the whole tinnitus community, I want to thank you for all the work that you're doing, all the people that you're helping. It's amazing to be able to connect with someone like yourself. So thank you so much for your time today.
An absolute pleasure. I wish everybody well. It is possible to get better.
Thanks so much, Julian.
Okay, a pleasure.